with the project looking at the extension of a proposed light rail system into South Oakland County, which would extend from 8 Mile to 16 Mile, covering multiple jurisdictions, all of which are involved with the task force. So our charge was to basically create a master plan for this area, and we've since divided into groups, and we're trying to come up with different alternatives, not only just about land use, but also about how the system will work at grade, and what kind of design implementation we can come up with.
I was asking the question, what is a sponsor?
Well, the projects, like you said, they're not a client, so they're not paying us, but basically Dr. Kim has worked with different project sponsors, community organizations. Anyone else want to take?
For the next question.
Okay.
Complete your thought.
And they had come to him to utilize our studio to assist them in this design process. They have a lot of planning and kind of policy in place, and that's kind of the foundation, and they wanted us to come in and complete the design end of it.
Cool. I want to talk to the Chinese last. I want to say, isn't this crazy? This is completely crazy, right? We'll come back to it. I've had 3 trips to Beijing in 2005, 6, and 7. So I've been there and worked on certifying the Beijing Olympic Village under lead ND. That's my little bit of contact with Beijing. But this is crazy. So I was saying at lunch to June that I favor right now planning for totalitarian countries, because they can just do what they execute. Tell me, you're the planner, tell me your idea, good. Build it. And it just gets done. That's fine. It's a little ruthless some days, but at least it's done. So let's see. So what authority, do you have power or do you have authority when you're doing this work? Are you generating ideas? How do you feel like they're interfacing with people that can actually get things done?
As far as getting things done, we've met with quite a few people from Berkeley and SEMCOG and MDOT and DDOT. And as far as that, we've got a lot of feedback in between. We've been able to bounce ideas off of them, things that they want to see happen, things that we thought that could be possible, and we kind of meshed our ideas together and come up with some pretty decent ideas or some pilot programs that we could think like we could put in different places. As far as authority, we've been told many times to don't worry about the actual implementation part of it. That's their job. Our job is to just come up with the more concepts, the details, the renderings, to take their ideas and turn them into actual images that they can sell to the community and sell them on to get stuff going. So I think in that aspect we're slowly getting there. We're getting more and more information from different people. And as it goes on, we find out more stuff. More people are willing to contribute things that they find, because I mean, this is Woodward, and there's been many studies, and there's some right now where they've just gotten like 19 million to do another study on it. I think SEMCOG has, so they're going to be doing their own study, and then I believe they're actually going to give us, WA3 and somebody else is actually going to give us their huge finding pamphlet once it's completed. So we'll have all that information to kind of go off of.
What kind of ideas are you all coming up with?
We're coming up with different ideas, like the gentleman Dan here. When he was talking to a couple of the people, they came up with a huge promenade, like turn it into one long stretch of, use the green spaces and, turn it into a huge walkability space. And there's large graveyards, and when you first look at it, there's graveyards.
In Woodward Avenue?
Yeah, it's actually right here. This section right here is a gigantic graveyard. Okay. And then there's another one right here, and there's, I think, 2 more along there. So when you look at that, you're like, that's a huge, gigantic space. And when you first think of, cemetery or graveyard, you don't want to touch it. But what we found out from talking to them was that Berkeley, they have tours of their graveyard. So they were saying that you could use spaces like that to create more of an entranceway onto Woodward. You can create these pathways that are nice through a graveyard that people would be willing to walk through. So like using that type of area to create a more promenade, places where people can walk in and out of and off of Woodward. That was one of the ideas. Looking at more mixed use because the residential area is so close, it's such a tight knit, and it's just right along the back edges of a lot of the buildings. You really can't tell someone, well, I'm going to tear your house down and then we're just going to redo. You know, it's like you said, we're not in certain places. So kind of finding out where we can implement more mixed use, how far we can go up, things like that. And creating like bringing in the mixed use, you're able to bring in people that would be willing to live and use the light rail. So you're building up commutership. So we were looking at stuff like that.
Cool. So my next question. So in doing a corridor study like this, there's a tension between natural places, and on this map I see, 4 downtown cores so identified. So that they're a place type, and they have a certain walking pattern. So I don't think I heard the suggestion was that people are going to walk the 9 or 10 miles diagonally.
They want to create that, but
really,
yeah,
do people actually walk that far?
No, people do not walk that far. But what they want is they want to try to turn Woodward at least into a walkable environment. Because some spaces, there's just long stretches of concrete or a long wall of the building, and they want to be able to change that, make it more inviting to where people just don't stop and then just turn back. They want, if you're willing to walk it, they want it to be walkable for that person. They don't expect you to walk 9 miles, and that's what the light rail would be for. But in between those stops, they want that environment friendly, inviting, you know, kind of like creating that environment where people would be willing to stay for a while, which some places on Woodward actually lack.
Sure. So I was starting to say there's some downtown centers here, and those have certain behaviors around them. And then you've also superimposed circles at each transit stop. That's presumably what is it, a half-mile walk. So
that would actually be better answered by these guys.
Okay. Step.
That's
right.
theirs.
Okay. So talk to me about this, and then also I'm just going to observe. You know, you drew your dots, and sometimes the downtowns don't actually fall where the transit's going to be. So
right.
How do you reconcile this?
Well, what we did is we looked at Woodward, the corridor, and we looked at major roadway intersections, and so those actually represent the major roadway intersections. And obviously, as you can see, the major intersections don't necessarily correspond with the downtown cores. So our thought was then to go through, take a look and see what exactly is a half mile from those major intersections, and then see, you know, how much further the downtowns are. So our plan incorporates not only transit along the corridor, but then we also tried to come up with a way to link these downtown cores. And our thought was to introduce some type of linear infrastructure that could actually wind through alongside the corridor. So we'd have 2 different types of transportation, if you will. We'd have well, 3, the roadways, the transit, and then this linear park for walking and biking, etc.
Other team members want to add anything? You drew the circles too. Put the center at the major mile markers as opposed to the half-mile markers. Talk about that.
Well, I guess I first talk about the idea of nodes,
Okay.
major nodes. Just connections from different parts of the cities, different parts. Like, we always use mile roads around here. We don't cut through neighborhoods most of the time. Sure. So that's where that kind of idea came across. I mean, we're just on the idea of like creating maybe more transit stops between them, as far as creating walkability, like quarter mile TOD style. But as far as, well, it's just figuring out the range in which people can walk, like half a mile, quarter mile from the stop. That's where that comes from.
And well, there is an additional logic behind that too. If you look at those intersections, several of the downtowns, that is kind of, you know, the major road running into downtown. So Royal Oak, for example, the crossroads 11 mile, it hits Woodward. That's going to be a main path into downtown. Coming off of 696, that's your access to Woodward Avenue. It's also an access point to downtown Royal Oak, and then down south into Ferndale. So
So a question for you, I can see some of these little images here beginning to capture how auto-dominated Woodward feels, and it's a pretty rough patch to walk. So when you do a TOD plan like this, and I used to know my mile roads pretty well, but you can imagine a really big mile road divides, that circle is divided up into 4 quadrants, that basically you won't cross from one to the other because the street's so hostile. You won't even, sometimes you can cross Woodward. Do we know the dimension of the Woodward right of way? It's like, it's a football, right? Wide, 200 feet, 300 feet. Do we know the number?
Some places are 225 feet across, so it's quite large.
It's pretty imposing.
I think an interstate superhighway is 300, is that right? That's pretty much the acme of unwalkable. So at 225, you're at the outer limit.
Excuse me, I'd like this group to wrap up about a minute.
June, come on, we're just getting going. Well, just a couple things to say. So just, we've worked on a bunch of corridor studies that are TOD corridor studies. So one is when you guys, your group reconvenes to draw new circles, right? You can draw some bigger and some smaller, or use sort of some as fill, some as not, whatever, because these are all a little different. Second thing is just consider those half-mile markers. I don't know if people visited Chicago. Come to Chicago. You're welcome. You're hereby invited. Okay. Because if you look at where the commerce does well today, sometimes there's legacy, like I know 9 Mile in Royal Oak, or is that Ferndale, whatever. You know, there's inline stores that are doing just fine. But sometimes when you want to start the new retail bid, if that street is too wide, if the distance from one store to the other across the street is too wide or too difficult to cross, it won't work as inline walkable retail. So you look for a right-of-way that's no limit. In our experience, about 66 feet. So I don't know. Do you know the right-of-way widths for each of these streets?
We do not.
Okay. Go measure, you know, for the next go-round. Because if it's too wide, you really do have 4 quadrants, and the circle is your idea imposed on a different physical reality. So time's up, right?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, please.
So, do we need to be mic'd?
Yes.
So just to clarify, did your client group, have they cited the rail stops for you? Or is that part of your charge, is to cite the rail stops?
It's part of our charge.
Okay. And did your group do that? I noticed there's a map over here, the group we're moving to. So you haven't gotten to that point yet?
We have some ideas and some concepts. We haven't finalized our decisions, but this is the direction we're heading.
The only other comment I guess I'd make is that each one of those communities that you've identified has such a different character and demographic profile. Maybe some sense of that differentiation, that character, you know, as you're documenting your existing conditions. And I think opportunities would flow from there.
Actually, can I comment on that?
Of course.
Was it, that's actually one of the things that Eric brought up, is keeping their identity between city and city, along with creating where it is one single identity at the same time. So it's kind of the mesh between the two we're working with right now. That's, I mean, we're just starting, but that's kind of frame posed direction.
Okay, next group, please.
So fast.
So,
you again?
actually the 2 of us again. So what we first started to do on the top row was basically just figure out some of the challenges, and then we divided the space up into its 6 quadrants, the 6 cities that we're going to be dealing with. And then what we kind of looked at is the different kind of rail stops, and of course, you know, in this type of plant, every city is going to want their own rail stop. You can't leave anybody out or you're going to have some issues. So we just kind of did 2 little spots where we tried to lump them in to where we could have a few where we can catch 2 cities with this one. We can actually catch 3 cities with this rail stop, 2 here, and then some of the larger ones get their own. But at least we can catch them. And then some of the other, on the other side, we can actually move it down a little into their own little section to where they can have their own rail stop. So we're looking at kind of the position and how much ownership each person gets for this rail stop. Now Berkeley, Huntington Woods, because they're on one side of the street, they're going to get that side of the street of the rail stop, depending on, you know, how much it is. And then we looked at some different style nodes, just the large commercial areas that are in this district. We have many downtown areas, Royal Oak, Berkeley, things like that. Then we have some offshoots on Coolidge Highway, hospital, things like this. This map actually shows what are perceived as known nodes, where after some of the first assignments, people, one of the other groups was nice enough to do walking, kind of talk to people. And these are the three areas that they kind of seem are the most known and recognizable places on Woodward. The zoo, right around Berkeley, the cemetery, or the cemetery and hospital areas. These are the three like well-known people. You asked them, they knew where they were at. So then we go into high traffic areas on the outskirts of Woodward, things that we have to pay attention to as far as the cities or how far the zoo goes out, and there's some other things over here. But then I wanted to also look at what high traffic areas that actually connect, and what we found is there's actually gaps in between a lot of these spaces. And right now we're looking at if we place a rail stop in the voids, which isn't normally commonly done, but can you create spreading from that and create more business? Or do you place the stops within the areas, which is what is normally done, to just help the business that's already there, and then as that'll start to spread out and create better nodes and longer and wider ones. So that's what we've looked at so far as that. Now Dan will then go over his two portions.
I want to ask, is
Oh, go ahead.
coincidence that the hospital and the cemetery are
I was kind of wondering the same thing, yeah.
seems like a co-location.
Yeah. As soon as they're done.
So then we wanted to look from that, and also from the workshop that we conducted with our project sponsors, and look at areas that we kind of considered prime for opportunity. So as of right now, I've identified 5 areas along the corridor. Right in downtown Birmingham, basically the downtown as it exists right now is situated along Old Woodward, but Woodward Avenue kind of juts off to the right, and it's not as pedestrian friendly and as much of a downtown feel. So that's definitely an area of opportunity. And then also, like Spen said, linking Berkeley and the hospital and creating this sort of larger node because of their proximity and because there's so much traffic and activity around those areas. Downtown Royal Oak, like Mike was saying, being able to link the downtown with Woodward because it's really offset. It's not right along the corridor. Right at 696, there's actually a pretty good opportunity to create maybe a larger transit station and kind of a regional hub. And that would be right here. You have the zoo, and then across the street you have a larger plot of vacant land. And because this is kind of a major axis of commuter traffic, because of the expressway, we kind of thought that this could be a prime location where commuters could come in along the expressway and park, and then utilize the new transit system. Yeah, exactly. And then also Ferndale, just enhancing and implementing more density there.
Tell me about this stuff, especially.
Well, we actually did a precedent study. It was kind of part of our second step in the process about a month ago. So we looked at 4 different urban design or urban models. And what I did was just try to translate what we learned from the precedent study onto the map, just to kind of give a conceptual feel of what that would look like. Sustainable urbanism, which obviously is your area of expertise, I tried to think about basically just as a means of applying it to transit.
Okay.
I didn't want to go into detail as much about land use in that area. So what I wanted to do was create better connections along the cross streets, because as it stands right now, the bus system in many instances doesn't actually cross Woodward. So even if you did put
It stops.
yeah, it actually stops. In some areas it'll kind of stop along Coolidge and Judd, and it doesn't actually connect. Right, and I thought that if there's going to be a major investment in light rail on this corridor, it's going to need connections at all these major cross streets. Also implementing more park and ride, just because it is such an auto-oriented region, that is definitely something that's going to have to be considered. And then also creating maybe possibly a bike share system, because there are so many downtowns that are offset from the corridor that are walkable. And by creating a bike share system, people could use transit and other means to access those.
Cool. 2 questions. Are you studying density along the corridor, recording it in some way?
We don't have specific numbers at this point, but density is definitely one of the big areas that we're going to look at, because traditionally along the corridor, at least commercially, there's one-story commercial with front parking.
Sure.
That's pretty much the norm along the corridor. So improving that, improving density, really recessed into these neighborhoods. It's all single-family housing for the most part. Which
Except for downtown Birmingham and downtown.
yeah, the downtowns, yeah, but just adjacent,
Yeah.
and that's also a challenge, as you increase density along the avenue.
The other thing I would want you to poke around about is finding out if you could look at the census data for households without cars. Yes, it's possible to live in Detroit without a car. Oftentimes it's driven by poverty, which is not preferred, but you'd be surprised. I bet in Royal Oak, I bet in Birmingham, there are people that do it. It'd be interesting to know and map them.
Yeah.
Map them. So if you could do that.
Absolutely.
Because don't you think this is, it's a change of the culture project masked as an infrastructure study, that if you actually built this, you would offer a proposition to Southeast Michigan to say, maybe you can build the cars, you can own the cars, but maybe not here, you don't need one. And that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think, a lot of the work that you're doing, you're really an ambassador for, you're the face of this new way of living that could happen here. So, I'm a big believer that planners are advocates, and you're out there, trying to make connections people often can't make for themselves. And so, if you can tell those stories and pull them out, you'll succeed wildly. And I will just push back on the idea that just think of the ideas and it's the other person's problem to implement them. In school, that is absolutely correct. You should think perfectly freely. But in practice, if you're just the ideas person and you hand it in and it lands with a big thump and then dust starts to collect on it, and that's a choice. You could practice that. But there are firms that make a lot of money generating reports that sit on shelves, right? So I scold you not to do that. I encourage you to be the activist that figures out how to get to 6 out of 6 mayors and get them so excited that the next campaign for mayor is about your plan. Like, I'm for it more than my opponent, right? Wouldn't that be? That happened to me once, and I just still have chills about it. So that's success when you reach through. How about working with 6 different cities? How's that?
Well, we haven't really. We've seen a little bit of the problems that it creates, but because they're all invested in this task force, they're already working together. So we really haven't had to play the role of that. In between, or that mediator that's bringing them all together. Definitely at our first meeting and our little workshop that we did, you saw different opinions there. Berkeley was well represented, so you saw a lot of interest in Berkeley and a lot of conversation about that. But all in all, they're all working to one common goal.
So what are these drawings? What's this building right here? Is this a building in the middle of Woodward Avenue?
That's our ideas about the improvements So I
Very
just
good.
made three of the three models.
Yes.
So this is the first one. I think that's the most initial one here. We're just considering to make the rail goes in the middle of the avenue.
Yes.
So it will make us to cancel one lane, one
Okay.
car lane. So after that, we added the two bike lanes on both sides of the road of the avenue. So after that, we just maybe we'll plant some trees in the four lines here. Maybe we'll make the road much greener. And that's our first initial design here. We will probably maybe just cancel 2 lanes on the avenue now. So introduce the track in the middle of the road. That's the station here. We have the both sides platforms. So and we just made some design at the U-turn section for the cars. The cars should go to this lane here. That's the U-turn lane, and they should be wait here because there's a traffic light. That because if the light rail goes along this way, they couldn't turn. They just have to wait here until the light turns, and they can go to the U-turn now. So that will limit the people who use their private cars, I think. Yeah. And also we have 2 crazy ideas here. That's the crazy ones.
Bring it on.
So this one is I was thinking to build a building just above the track. Maybe it's a commercial building, maybe it's apartments, maybe it's some with other functions, maybe with its factory, or everything's okay. That will narrow down the space of the avenue, so we can see the whole avenue was divided into two small streets that are walkable and are friendly for people to walk inside it. And maybe we can make use some of these spaces as pedestrians in both sides, and we can make it as maybe some streets in Birmingham that are walkable, very walkable. So this crazy idea makes the railway runs just on the ground. But this idea, I just elevated the rail, the track, into the second floor. So the first floor could be made use as maybe retails, maybe some other functions for people to. It's more likely to be a commercial street now. So I think this one maybe will face too many problems such as noise and such affections by the track, by the rail. Maybe I think it's not quite easy to realize, but I think it's just the crazy ideas.
They're not crazy. So June and I had lunch today, and I said Woodward needed a building in the middle. So this is exactly what I was expecting to see. Thank you. Nicely done. But the one thing I was going to say is you've done a good job of arraying choices. Can you do one more, which is a building in the middle, but the train not underneath with the train taking up
Both sides.
Yeah, both sides, right? Taking up travel lanes, automobile lanes.
Yeah.
Because I think that's not a very pleasant building. You wouldn't want to be under there if you didn't have to.
Yes.
So do one more, but it's not crazy. It's really really neat. Who owns this land?
The land now
Yes.
is just it's grass. It's very wide.
Boulevard.
Very wide.
Yeah, the median.
The median, so
Yeah.
I know. Whose land is it?
MDOT.
MDOT.
No, it's the state,
Correct.
yeah, M1 is the state.
Perfect. Have you talked to MDOT?
They were at the workshop. We didn't present that.
Yeah.
But
It's just
we will.
finished files today.
You know, it's just crazy enough an idea that under the guise of jobs and economic development, you might actually get a governor that had passion about this to call up MDOT and say, give me a 60-foot right-of-way. We'll lease it, we won't sell it, and so we'll give you 50 years or something on a building or something like that. But that's really cool. Really cool.
Thank you.
Who's the tall guy? Hi. Hi, good to see you. How are you? Thanks for coming. It's great. We're having a rolling conversation.
So
Gene is telling us if there's time. Is there time to ask a question of this group? Or?
I think you should have time. I think you should say.
We can. Okay.
About my, go to mine now? I'm in the
I was
group.
talking
Yeah,
to you. You guys already said?
Unless Constance would like to ask.
Yeah, I
Only
just,
for 1 minute, so.
one minute?
Yes.
Okay, so quickly, a question about context. Are you studying and mapping and analyzing the other light rail proposals along Woodward?
Yes, we've looked at the M1 and things like that.
Okay.
We've come across some fake ones that actually seem like they could work. Yeah, they're freshwater light rail.
Right.
Yeah, and it seemed to be very thorough, but as far as like the ones that were actually put out, we've been looking.
Because I think these sort of bratwurst-shaped chunks of the corridor are very, they make very compelling graphics. But again, I think particularly as you start to think about citing stops, these things are generally determined. There's all sorts of criteria and technical, which system is being used. You talked about car length, traffic speed. So, this political reality that you're talking about giving everybody a stop, there's also this technical overlay that, and again, the corridor doesn't stop and end in your study area, right? So I think some sense of, what will precede this, hopefully, is the Detroit chunk, right? Hopefully, from New Center to the entertainment district. And then just very quick, I want to reinforce what Mr. Farr mentioned about density. I appreciate seeing 3-dimension. I think if there's any way you guys could do a massing model of just the FAR in the corridor, it'd be very instructive for you as you move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so last couple of please.
Kill it.
How you doing?
So the project is like
Okay, so first of all, I don't have any background in urban design. So for me, this was an interesting project to kind of educate myself on the process of urban design and how we plan. But when we went into this phase, what we basically focused on was some of the key challenges and key opportunities that we can get from the corridor itself. And one of the first things we looked at is connectivity. I mean, that's probably our biggest challenge, is how do we connect the downtowns? Where do we connect them? How? What are the sizes? What are the functions of nodes if we create nodes? Are they just for transport, or do they become something else? And how do people get to back and forth between those connections? The second challenge is how to keep pedestrians safe. They're not going to want to stay along this corridor or walk it if they don't feel safe along it. So the idea of, these were just some preliminary sketches of, do we create roundabouts in certain aspects? Transit locations, where do we put them? Parking and access. People still are going to drive it, so they'll have to park, and how do those become accessible? And then one of the major aspects that I thought is Woodward itself is a historic corridor. It's known for vehicles. I mean, that was the whole reason it was created, and that's what it's known for. So how, in implementing all these new ideas, how can we still maintain the historic quality of Woodward and not lose the idea of the dream cruise and all the big ideas that happen along it? And then lastly, the key challenge is phasing, and how do we phase it? From there, we looked into the opportunities, and as I spoke with the key challenges, we also have opportunities to create nodes. So we can create these nodes and make them, give them different functions, such as an art. One is entertainment, shopping, leisure, such as the Detroit Zoo would be a major leisure node. Other key opportunities were creating interchanges, such as the 10-mile interchange, where the Detroit Zoo currently exists. Also, the 13-mile node where the Beaumont Hospital is. That's another key node that we looked into. And from there, we kind of evaluated some of the primary goals, and in looking at these primary goals, are how we define the secondary goals in relation to those. So the primary goals would include uniformity, walkability, safety, sustainability, vitality, public domain, connectivity, diversity, practicality, and uniqueness. When we think about uniformity, it's obviously how do we maintain this uniform corridor? It could be as simple as maybe putting some fences in so that all the edges be read as one. It could be placing art, landscaping.
Can I pause and just ask, why do you want uniformity?
That was one of the things that was brought up in the workshop, and one of the groups that I was in is they wanted Woodward to be a uniform corridor to make people walk it, to make it feel safe. But at the same time, I think as Nick pointed out, they also do want to hold on to that uniqueness per each down district.
I'm just consider adjusting the word, because uniformity and walkability are hostile conflict.
Yes.
As far as walkability, one of the things that we really decided was that we need to create pedestrian paths and separate.
Is that a sidewalk?
Not necessarily just a sidewalk. I mean, it could be a sidewalk, but it could also be more than just a sidewalk. It could be something that's interactive. And we need to separate those from the traffic areas.
Is your partner going to also present? Or I don't know what you worked out.
Possibly, if she wants to, sure. You want to?
She's dying to.
No, I don't think she is. She doesn't really say too much. Well, we might make her on the next one. So let me just sum this one up real quick. And looking at safety, let's slow the speeds down, let's separate the pedestrians. Sustainability, try to revitalize what is there, and implement public transit for public domain, versatile activities, and limit the private ownership, making it more public. I'll skip connectivity. Diversity, just rezone and utilize more mixed use. And create cultural nodes. Practicality, utilize as much existing as possible and incorporate things in phases, or construction phases. And for uniqueness, let's bring a new idea, something that makes Woodward the icon of the Midwest. So
innovation.
Yes, innovation.
Yeah.
CC, keynote.
CC, one second. This 10 is too many. You've got to, distill it down. I think that mine can, Andrea says 6. I'm good at odd numbers, 5 or 7. Anyway, 10 is too many, and several of these do cancel each other out.
Sure.
Just, get that right. 5. Aim for 5.
Okay.
And make them really compelling so that somebody could, maybe even alliterative, the D words or the C words or something like
sure.
that. It would be, but a good first pass.
Okay.
CC, right?
Okay, so the keynotes.
I think the Woodward, I think the Woodward Avenue is a complex function. So I think we should add some keynotes to people relax and enjoy their life. And so I think I should add keynote to the 30-mile route, and another is the 10-mile route.
Okay.
So in the 30-mile road, there is a hospital. So
Yes.
so the people can go out in the building and feel the nature. And in the 10-mile road, there is a zoo. I think the zoo is important. So how can we connect the hospital, the zoo, to the 30-mile road and 10-mile road to make people relax and comfortable? So I think we should add some keynotes to the 13 mile and the turn.
Thank you.
And in addition to that, after we decided on those being our keynotes, we then wanted to look at the downtown areas, how those connect. And so basically what this sketch is black being Woodward and cross streets. The purple is our interchange nodes. The green is existing green space that happens or proposed green space. And then the downtown areas are in blue. And then on here we have a red line showing a continuous walking bike path that connects all of those districts. And the idea behind this is not that it goes straight along Woodward, that it really kind of like weaves and interacts with the corridor and outside of the corridor. So it gives people this idea of experience and enjoyment and really adding interest to their life. And then from there, we focused on the 13-mile node and what exactly would that look like? What shape does it take? How would we implement it? One of the reasons it is a key node, other than being the hospital, there's also a big plaza and parking lot that's located in that area, which Beaumont owns. So if we can get the hospital on board, it'd be a great opportunity to really develop there. And through some of Cece's original research, she had looked at the idea of doing some roundabouts, which I thought was an interesting concept to kind of slow traffic down a little bit. So in the 13-mile node, that's one of the things we would implement, would be a roundabout. The red here would be our continuous bike path. And this green that you see is the idea of placing the transit hub actually underground and allowing the natural grass, which obviously is parking lot now, but basically extending it up and over and allowing it just to become a grass pavilion for maybe an art node. And that function could then take on the idea of like an outside amphitheater, which would then add entertainment for people that live or work at the hospital, and it kind of becomes the art district. And that's basically where we're at. This is just a representation of the transit being able to go underground, and then we would pop it back up and then go back under at the keynotes.
Thank you. Really interesting stuff. I have a question for you.
Sure.
When you're talking to your sponsors, do you feel like the language you use connects to them? Is there a language that's used in school that when you go out in the real world, there are words they don't recognize or glaze over, or you feel like they're really excited?
It depends, because when I have spoken to some of the sponsors, one of the things I noticed is because I'm not, maybe it's because I'm not an urban planner, I tend to look at things as let's add some more green space, because for me personally, I relate to green space as opposed to just urban, urban buildings in the urban context. And I know they're very sensitive to that because green means money. So in that aspect, I guess some of the language they don't relate to. But as far as some of just the wording, I think they understand.
I guess I was trying to get at, thank you, that was a good answer. I was going to say, one thing I think that is true is a lot of times, people you're dealing with that have a power to implement your plan are a mayor or a city council. The mayor might have been on the school board and then went to the parks board and now is mayor and knows nothing about city planning or transit-oriented development or any of this stuff, right? So oftentimes you are the frontline educator, even for people with much more authority and a title that you don't have. And so that's always a challenge, and I think you're doing fine. I'm mindful of it because this is really hard stuff to communicate as a value proposition in a down economy in Michigan where there's this incredible skepticism that says, look, in 100 years we're still all going to be driving our own car, and I don't know what you're talking about here, and where's my parking, right? So you've got to overcome all that and make a compelling case that is, you'll hear a little bit from me about this later if you're still there, but that there's often triple and quadruple messaging. You're talking to the mayor, who's thinking about re-election and legacy, and then you're talking to the council, which wants to be the next mayor. You're talking to citizens at large, then you're talking to MDOT. There's like 4 or 5 people you're trying to sort of stroke and urge and nudge, all slightly differently. So anyway, I think it was a good presentation, but that was the thing I was struck about. And in terms of the drawings, I think this is really innovative. And you'll see later on a project we did that built CC's idea. So we like that idea. Same one, I like that one, I like that one. I'll take them both. So in terms of grade separation, one issue is for your consideration if what you wanted was long haul bicycle commuting. I don't know if that's what you're after, but that might be the thing rather than grade separating the transit. I'd run the transit through the intersections, piss off the cars is what I would do, but that's just me. But if you said, we really want to design this as a bike route so that people in Birmingham will commute to Royal Oak or to New Center or whatever, then privilege the bike. That's just a consideration. It's a really hard coming together point for all this stuff. What is that green little wrapper?
That's the idea of it. You can kind of see it in this sketch of a section.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
The transit's
nature
underground,
goes over.
and then nature goes just over as a path.
Bridge.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that you can connect without having to go around.
That'll be a hard sell. But
Of course.
Do you want to say
Do you
or ask?
both, since you're joining us?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I also agree the issue of uniformity is a difficult issue. I think what you want to look for is an element or elements that are consistent to Woodward, and then other elements that are consistent to the surrounding communities, and somehow find a way to bring those together. On the issue of green space, and given the topic today about sustainability, I think there's an opportunity to do bioswales and add green all along Woodward. And this bicycle path, for example, could go in and out of those swales. I mean, that's something I think you might want to consider. And the third question I had is it an assumption that the mass transit's in the center of Woodward?
No, that was just where we thought that it would best be implemented, partially because the idea that by putting it in the center, we could potentially locate car parking also in the center, and then that would leave walkability along the edges for the businesses. So it gives people more of a sense of gathering.
Well, I guess it goes to the nature of the transit, but I know in Detroit that's a big issue.
Exactly.
Right? And I will tell you that we did the initial studies for Analog Rail, and we strongly said it should be at the curb or one lane out if you're going to try and encourage development. And for walkability, you want it to be a system that is relatively slow moving, that you can safely get on and off. Now, the city doesn't agree with that, but it looks like the city's going to be overruled. But if you go to Portland or cities like that, you normally see it on the curb. On the other hand, there's no reason why it can't move back and forth, depending on the situation. You know, like I was in Istanbul recently, and the light rail there is on the curb, it's in the middle, the two tracks are together sometimes. I mean, I don't even know if it's light rail, it could be fast bus or whatever. So that's something else you want to consider.
Okay. Thank you.
It's 4:30 now, so.
Oh, perfect.
Can I get at least one of the last ones?
You get the last one.
Yeah. So, great book if you don't have it. As I say, and we'll get you can find this on the internet, so, but I want you to steal this. So, page 126 is the sustainable neighborhood diagram. And so, for your consideration, particularly for the team, this is doubling back a little bit. It applies to your open space comments as well. In a transit-served corridor, my strategy is to use open space minimally and strategically. This is the place where density should happen, where lots of activity should be. Yes, you need a right amount of open space, but this is definitely not the place to build a new central park or to exclude new, taller, denser buildings, and for in fact, the whole region to migrate over some decades and generations to in the Woodward corridor, Jefferson and Grand River corridors, that sort of stuff. So, but anyway, the diagram here, I pointed to it only to say that that median in Woodward really does look like one of the kind of green buffer edges that sustainable urbanism says is a unit of infrastructure in a way it isn't now. It could filter your stormwater, it could have your geothermal field underneath it, it could have 10 or 20 other things going on there. So it really is it's a prime piece of real estate. I think, like the dean, you're the dean, right?
I was the dean.
You were the dean. Oh my God.
I'm not dean anymore.
Okay. Well, you sound like a dean. It was very impressive.
I'm
very
not
good.
used to it yet.
Okay, you're good at it anyway.
We keep it tight.
Yeah. Can we call you dean anyway? Okay. But anyway, just back to the idea that here it's a building, other places it could be, a rain facility, stormwater facility, and I do, absolutely get rid of uniformity, because think about it. I mean, if you were on light rail riding this, wouldn't it be neat if you're in Birmingham, it has a Birmingham feel, a half mile, and it's different, and sometimes it's tight, sometimes it's wide, sometimes it's overgrown, sometimes it's urban. Oh my God, that's delightful. You want that variety. That's rich. So just cross it out. And if the person that told you to write that has a problem with it, have them call me, because I really think it's the wrong thing to ask for. I understand the sentiment, but bury it at some other point. So time's up, right, June? All right. What's next? Nice presentation.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for coming to this Strolling review. We haven't done this before, so looks like it's fun. Maybe we should do this every year. So thanks, Steve and Conceptual and a bunch of other students who came to this review. And you guys should stick around because we're going to have a panel discussion pretty soon, 10 minutes. So do you want to explain?
Well, I'm sure you'll. So yes, join us in 10 minutes for the Sustainable Urbanism Dialogue. Douglas Farr, Stephen Vogel, Professor June Kim, and Marja Winters from the city of Detroit.
Cool.
Marta just called me and said that she's going to be late.
Oh my goodness. All right.
But she's on here far away.
Okay. Excellent.
So
Thank you, June.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have some time.